more so than skills, I want a place where I can bring people together and we can go, all right, we all have conflict. How do we channel that into creativity? How do we strengthen our work? How do we bring the most honest parts of ourselves into it so that we're creating something authentic that we care about? Because if we really care about it, we're going to do better work, and that will inspire other people to do the same.
Hello, I'm Tammy Hahnemann, a maker, digital content creator, someone who works in many different mediums with a true passion for helping others find their creative spark. I also really love to connect others who have something to share with those who want to learn. Welcome to Heart and Hands of a Maker, the creative journey. If you found us, chances are you're on a quest for creative inspiration. Maybe you're feeling stuck in an artistic rut, dreaming of turning your passion into a flourishing business, or maybe you're hoping to see your work in print or grow your online presence. Well, my friend, wherever you are on your creative journey, you're in the right place. Today, we're talking with Jessica Coté, aka Rosie Revolver, a full-time metalsmith. Jessica is a jewelry instructor offering in-person and virtual workshops year-round, as well as sells her finished work. And she's a mom of 3. We'll be discussing Jessica's creative journey, explore her business evolution, and hear what she has coming up next, which, amazing. Wait till you hear everything she's got going on. It's time to grab your favorite beverage, settle into your creative space, and meet Jessica. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me, Tammy. I'm thrilled to be here. A little nervous, but I'm very excited to be here.
Oh, well, you're in good hands, and our listeners love you, so don't be nervous. We are so glad to have you and honored to have your time and to learn more about you. So thank you.
Okay.
All right.
I just did a podcast a few weeks back with Christine Midgen, and it took me like a week to listen to it. I was like, I can't do it.
Oh,
well, I think we all have that. Like, is that what I look like? Is that what I sound like?
Is that what I sound like?
Yeah, it's out there now.
Yep, it's real, and yep, there's no taking it back. No taking it back. So I'm excited to listen to Christine's podcast. I heard from her recently. She's like, "Hey, Rosie's on my show. I can't wait to hear it." So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah,
looking forward to it.
She was lovely too. So I just appreciate what you guys are doing. I think it's. I'm kind of new to the podcast realm. People have been listening to them and, engaging in them for so long. And I was doing like the true crime and stuff like that. But I'm relatively new to the world of it as it relates to us. I didn't realize, I wish I would have, but of course, there, it's like everything else. There's an app for everything. There's a podcast for everything. And so I'm like, oh, where have I been?
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. You're here now and we're here together. And I love what Christine's doing too. So for anybody out there listening, if you haven't heard Christine's podcast, Slow Made, be sure to tune in. And I hope to have her on as a guest soon too. So there we are. So please, Jessica, fill us in. Give us some background on how we wound up here and we'll get to where you're headed.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, as far as jewelry, there were a lot of things I think in my earlier life that sort of were dots that, I didn't know were dots that I would connect later to kind of, get me to where I am now, and not only doing jewelry, but kind of doing it from the perspective that I do it from, which tends to be one that is, I think, much more from the point of view of an artist. So it's a little bit more holistic, maybe, as opposed to like a traditional trade or a bench jeweler. I mean, obviously skills are different. Tools are frequently different. There's a lot of things that differentiate the two, degree, all of that kind of stuff. But I think that I'm not so technique driven. I want to have and have tried to make sure that I've developed skills over time that allow me to do what's maybe not exactly what is in my head, but something close to that effect that I can convey more or less a feeling that I want or a message that I want. And then my chosen medium for that is jewelry, right? So that being said, when it comes to the nitty gritty of how I got here, I went to North Carolina State, NC State here. I'm just south of Raleigh in North Carolina. And I've been in the same little small, it used to be a farm town, it's growing, since 97, and made it out to go to college. And then I came right back. Wow. So I went there and I got a bachelor's degree in art and design. And it wasn't until I was already there that I realized, oh, I really want to do metal. And they didn't have a metals program, but it's such a good school. It's very difficult to get into. I felt very honored to have been offered a place. And it was close to home. I'm an only child. It was near my parents. And I felt like that was kind of where I needed and wanted to be. So, my parents were always very much like, you are going to get out of your education whatever you put into it. Because I was like, no, I want to go to Pratt. I want to go to SCAD. I want to go to, all these East Coast, like wonder places. Right. And it wasn't in the cards at the time. So state it was, and it was amazing. And the foundation that I got there in design as a whole, encompassing everything from elements of art, principles of design, to problem solving, to being scrappy, to thinking on your feet, to collaborating, to all these things. And I really didn't understand even then so much the value of it. But the older I get and the more immersed I get in my work, in my relationships with my peers who are out there trying to do similar things and teaching, it's really been invaluable. So since I couldn't do metal, my professors were awesome. They said, you can do jewelry. That's fantastic, but you have to do it in whatever discipline your studio is in that semester. So as a design major, I had to go through everything. We had to do photography. We had to do textiles. We had to do the fine arts. And so that's what I was doing. So I wanted to do jewelry. Well, I better figure out how to do it on a loom, or I better figure out how to do it in the dark room, or, how to mix in, what was I using? Resins and things to stiffen up paint. It just got to be very exploratory. And I think that even though I knew pretty early on metal is where I wanted to go, it really fed into my approach for how I go into jewelry. And it's definitely not that, it's not that bench jeweler, fine jewelry. I very much consider myself an art jeweler, where it's not going to be something that you would ever see in what are even the current jewelry stores, like a Zales or a, something like that. So yeah, that's kind of how I got here. As far as the metals experience itself, I was able to go down the street to an all-girls college and take one beginning metals course from Sydney Scher, and that was awesome. I learned so much, but I was also terrified, and it showed. The work was really, really bad, not just technically, which you would expect, right? But there was just no imagination to it. The finishing was horrible. It was very different for me to work on such a small scale. And my critique at the end was pretty bad. I mean, she was very kind about it. I've talked about this before, and I'm not sure I've always made it clear that she was very nice, but she was very honest. And she just said, this is really uninspiring. And that always stuck with me, because of course it was oh, ouch. But it was also she was right. It just was so stiff and scared. So I keep that in mind a lot, because I think that when I'm teaching, I really want there to be an element of play, and I want there to be an element of freedom. And, the failing, we say it all the time, right? It's part of the process. It's how you learn. But I think that whole concept of failing forward is such a good one. And that critique from her was a really far fall forward for me in terms of some clarity on, okay, what kind of work do I want to do, and how do I want to feel when I'm doing it? And so I try to keep that close, I think, as I go through it. As far as my career itself, I got a job out of college working at a bead shop. I ran their courses. I designed their courses and taught their courses. And I had a small studio in the back. I had continued metals on my own at a local community center in Raleigh. This Pool and Arts Center has got a fantastic metals offering over there. So I was piecemealing where I could to supplement everything I was getting at, the university. And so I got that job and was doing small repairs in the back, which were, not soul food by any means, but it was, my hands were on metal. I was doing something that, and making money doing something that it was at least touching the realm of what I wanted to become. So, and running their online classes. And I also was head of their like wholesale. So I would go up to New York and do the shopping for the beads and stuff like that. It was amazing.
Yeah, that in itself is an amazing experience to have the opportunity to
so cool.
Buying.
Yeah, it was so, so cool. So, and it would just be like day trips. You'd leave early in the morning, you'd fly up there, you land, you get a taxi, you go around the city, you get your stuff, you place your orders, and then you come home and it's like, what just happened? Thank God that was not my money. So, but then 2008 hit and, the world kind of turned upside down a little bit, economically speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And I got laid off. I had a 1-year-old and I was going, well, I have an art and design degree and a son. I can go probably pour coffee and pay for daycare, or I can figure this out. And, I had some tools and stuff, and the store that had to let me go, they were so good to me. And they said, take the things, because we're not going to use them, that you were using here in the back of the shop, and you can pay us slowly over time. So that was like my hydraulic press that I still have, and a few other things. And that was such a gift. Just, that flexible grace that they gave me. And I'm still friends with the owner. So yeah, that was a really hard year. We made it work. My parents helped. My mom's a writer. My dad was a career DJ. He did morning drive radio my whole life. So they didn't do the traditional 9-to-5 job either. And they got it, right? And they knew I had worked hard. They knew I had tried. So they said, we're gonna, if you had gone to grad school, we would have helped with something. You didn't go to grad school. We're going to cover your mortgage for a year.
Wow.
You cover everything else and you figure this out and you make it work. And I was like, deal. And I did somehow. And it's blurry. My work now is very different than it was then. It was not easy. And I didn't get off to the best start. I was really trying so hard to make it work and make it work fast that I lost a lot of sight of my why in the moment, other than because the why became about money, survival, about providing, and that's hard, I think, for us. It's hard for anybody, but what we do is so subjective, and the value is so much perceived. So when I went on to Etsy, was a big thing then, like a very pure, great resource. And I was trying to sell and 7 months went by and I hadn't sold anything. And so I saw, I was seeing what other people were doing and it was going well and stuff. And I fell into that thing where it was like, there was work that I just loved. And I was like, I want to make that. And I want to learn that. I want to be able to do that. And look what they're doing. And they're selling out and stuff like that. And I went right down the road that I see so many people go down. And I started copying to learn. How did they do it? What were they doing? Reverse engineering. And then I sold way too soon. And it wasn't mine. It wasn't authentic. And that was probably the second hard lesson. So the first one was like, I'd say that uninspiring critique. And I think the second really hard lesson was having someone that you really respect and admire write you and be like, what are you doing? That's mine. That's not yours. And I admitted that. I mean, it hit me really quickly. It was like instant awareness and shame. Like, what? And that's still hard to talk about. And that was probably 2009. And it's still just like, and then, and copying was such a huge thing back then in terms of like people were very vocal about it. It was very much a topic. It was very, and I got right into the middle of it. And like,
You jumped in with both feet.
I did. And, and I don't know if some of it was maybe just age and just feeling really insecure and unsure of how it was all, how I was going to make it work. And, but I was on both sides of it. I was, and I look back now and I understand, I can have some compassion for what I felt and where I was in life. And I think what I was trying to be and do, but at the same time, I'm like, I wish I would have stayed more in my own lane. I wish I would have gotten back to the core of what I fell in love with in the first place and worked it out. And it would have worked out. It might not have gone as fast. It might not have gone as, the way I wanted it to go. But what that did do is it forced me to really kind of reevaluate what I loved and why I loved it and stuff. And so I started stepping back and reworking. And I really went back to something I had worked a lot with in college, which was filigree.
Ah.
And the reason I liked working with the filigree in college was because I had to use fibers in one of my studios, since they wouldn't let me, there wasn't a metals program. I mean, I could use metal, but it had to be incorporated with whatever. So I was doing a lot of embroidery and weaving through filigree frames and mandalas and shapes and coming up with these designs. So I kind of went back to that and I started experimenting with soldering it, and I started experimenting with roll milling it and forming it and shaping it and cutting it and doing stuff. And my work kind of grew from there. And that was very much kind of first level, but that was, that was big for me, because that was, I think, the first step towards like, oh, I do kind of have a voice. It's like a little squeaky. It's like really small, but it's there. And, yeah, so it's just evolved from there. That was my very long answer to your story, but it's evolved over time. My ex-husband and I bought this house that I'm in now. I'm in my studio right now, and we bought it in March of 2012, and he left in May. And so that was the second time I was like, okay, how am I going to make it work? How am I going to figure it out? And fortunately, Richard Salley needed an assistant for Bead Fest up in Philly, and he had been my instructor a couple years before. And he sent a note just out of the blue and was like, I'm in a jam. I need an assistant. Mine can't make it. I know you know how to solder. I've got 14 women on torches for like 3 days or whatever it was. Can you come? And I'm like, no, I don't like people. You do not want me. You do not want me in a classroom with you. I promise. As your student is one thing, but you don't want me interacting with people that are paying you money. And
I don't like people.
They ruin it for everyone. So he said, I'll pay you a daily rate and I'll cover your expenses. And I was like, because I didn't know how I was going to pay the bills.
Sure.
So I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. Mm-hmm. And I just fell in love with it. I just fell in love with it. And nobody was more surprised than I was.
Well, it's not all people. It's just some people.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I mean, it was just, being a part of that for them. And it took me back to all the stuff that I remembered and loved from, a decade before in college, and just that learning environment, the energy of a classroom, watching them strive, watching them fail forward or not, and trying to reset them. It just felt like it was a whole new level, because this to me wasn't just about like the art and the things I loved and my why and all that stuff. This was something that was significant, that could ripple out. And there was something that I just wasn't expecting in that really made me feel like, okay, maybe this is more what I'm supposed to be doing. So I ended up assisting. He ended up needing more of a permanent assistant. So I did that for several years. And then as my skills grew and my confidence grew, and people started to know my name maybe a little bit, then it moved to a collaboration. And then it got to the point where he was like, you're ready, just go, you can do this. And Francesca, that you had on, who's a dear friend of mine, she had been in one of our classes, and she and I had stayed in touch. And she's the one who gave me my first solo shot at teaching. And that was just amazing. And again, I was terrified, but we made it through, and it was such a phenomenal experience. And I've been teaching since, on my own, I think since 2014, 2015.
So 10 years.
Love it. Yeah. 2015 for sure. Maybe 2014, somewhere in there. So yeah, online, film here at home, around the country, though not as much since COVID, because during COVID I had my third child, and so she's 3 now, and wow. So not as much travel these days. Though it's about to pick up again. I have several things coming this fall. And then yeah, just here in my home studio, I really like privates, and I like pairs that come in, because you still get a little bit of that energy, and you're running things by one another and watching the students work things out together, and kind of like asking questions till they get to the answer themselves is really nice, because you'll see, like you and Francesca talked about, you see the light bulb go off, and that's always exciting. And I really like that kind of small group, but there's still enough there that you get the energies up, right? So yeah, that's kind of where, and still trying to make, and I still love making, and it's finding a balance now between which hat you wear. You never know what audience you're talking to. Is it someone who buys your work? Is it someone who wants to learn to make? Is it someone who maybe uses a tool or something that you have had something to do with? It's very diverse and it's very dynamic, but it does at least it keeps it interesting. Every day is different, and I'm so grateful for it. I mean, it's a lot of work, but it is so rewarding. And it's one of the choices in my life that I've made that I'm like, I'm glad I chose this. It's a lot of days I'm like, I did choose this, right? I chose this. I chose, the 3-year-old is insane, and, whatever. And, the property needs like all this maintenance, and the house is, a 1942 and the roof is leaking. And I'm like, I chose this.
This is something I did, right?
Choices were made. But this part, yeah.
That's wonderful. Beadfest, teaching, having that experience and continuing that even in your own personal studio, that energy, that support. I really feel from your words, the value for you, or the benefit to you, is really helping others and getting them to that point. And that feeds your soul. Like, that is really, like, you're empowering. And I try not to use that word too frequently, but that's really, to me, what's resonating most, is that you just really thrive on empowering other people to find their voice and really help them. I mean, I do feel your Etsy experience was a necessary part of your journey. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that many of us haven't made that same mistake, maybe just not as publicly called out for it, mm-hmm. that's a hard lesson. But I think even in grade school, we all make mistakes. Every part in our lives, there's a mistake that's made, and hopefully at some point you'll forgive yourself.
Well, yeah. I do. It's the school of hard knocks. It has a lot of value, but I've tried to be, the older I get, I don't remember if I talked about this on Christine's podcast too, but I'm really just trying to take like extreme ownership mm-hmm. of everything, because then if I do that, it puts me back in control. I can make a better decision. Mm-hmm. And if I can do that, then I'm in a better place to be able to either help my kids when they get to the point when they're in something similar, mm-hmm. or my students, or whatever. And I think you're right. For me, it is very much about, I feel like I've been, I don't want to say an underdog, because that almost makes me sound like a victim, and I don't feel that way at all. But, there have been times in my life where it was like kind of do or die, mm-hmm. as far as this career that I really wanted to have. And so teaching has helped me feel like I'm giving back, because so many people have helped me. So many people have helped me. And my work even tends to always have a message. Like, when I do take the time to actually write about it, or what inspired, where it comes from, tends to hopefully be like an uplifting or motivational kind of thing. And in doing tools like this tumbling media, mm-hmm. hone and highlight, when I first started messing with that, this is a media that I sell, but the whole point was, how am I going to keep making more work? I don't really know how to hand finish. I don't have time. I've got a child. I've got to, fill booths. I was still doing shows. I was trying to, I was still doing consignment in stores. I needed to have inventory. I needed everything to look like consistent and like my brand and I certainly didn't have the skills to do that hand finishing. And even if I did have the skills, I didn't really have the desire, and I definitely didn't have the time. I wanted to just get to making the next piece. And for me, that's another reason it's like, it's certainly not for everybody. And it's certainly not anything special, but for those that it does help to like allow them to get to making that next piece, either because it's saving them time or because they have carpal tunnel or arthritis and they don't have the ability to sit there and hand finish. It's, things like that I want, that I'm interested in making. Like, how can I help the makers make more work?
Yep. Well, before you go too far, share a little bit more about the Hone and Highlight. I actually have some. I've used it. Love it.
Oh, do you?
Yep. And I have the newer version. Isn't it the newer one is the smaller pieces? Yep. Yep. So share a bit about that so people know what we're talking about.
Okay. So Hone and Highlight's just a tumbling media. There's a million different kinds out there, and it's nothing that I invented. It's a silicon carbide abrasive grit that's housed in a ceramic binder. So the rocks are actually ceramic and they've just been impregnated with a grit. And if you think of grit like you would think of a sandpaper grit, generally the coarser it is, the rougher the finish, the less shine and polish, and the more material is removed. So original Hone and Highlight came about over time because there was something like it. And this is one of those things I'm so fuzzy on and I wish I could remember. And this would have been around the time I was working in the jewelry store, like maybe 2007-ish. And I was using it, that I guess I got from Rio, and they stopped selling it. And it was driving me crazy because I really liked the finish of it. And they had other things that were similar. They had like an aluminum oxide, but it left more of a shine that I wanted. And it left the metal kind of, I felt like more like a darker gray than I wanted. So anyway, I was just struggling to find what I wanted. So I started researching consumables for tumbling and mass finishing and things like that. And I was learning all kinds of stuff like the automobile industry and, small machines, things like that, they'll get sandblasted or they'll go through these processes of being kind of obliterated by media, and then powder coating is applied or enamel or whatever. But that wasn't the right scale for jewelry.
No.
No. So, and I didn't want to sandblast, I didn't want to deal with a cabinet and stuff like that. But I knew that I wanted this soft kind of matte, dull finish. I knew that I wanted a certain amount of abrasive, and I didn't want the aluminum oxide. I didn't like the effect. And I was reading at the time a whole bunch of stuff about how aluminum oxide is a carcinogen. Mm-hmm. I didn't like that Rio's clean cut media, the plastic media that's also impregnated with abrasive. I didn't like that it was plastic, first of all, and I didn't like that it has formaldehyde. So anyway, I finally found a company and I just said, look, you sell the formula that I'm looking for. I want silicon carbide. I want it in ceramic. Ceramic's really long wearing. I said, but I don't want it in the shape that you sell it in, and I don't want it in the size that you sell it in. So can we? And they were like, yes, we can do that. We do custom formulations and combinations. And I was like, all right. And then here's the big question. What's the minimum order? 2,000 pounds. So, all right. So I sat on that for a while. I still had some, because when I had first bought it, I had to buy a 50-pound bag. So I had some time, right? Like I had time. Like this lasted me for years and years and years. And I was giving it to friends. And finally, one day I told Dave in 2018, things had gotten really tight financially. I was going through some court stuff with my ex-husband, and and I had been taking my media with me on the road for classes so that students could, if it was like a 2-day class, we would tumble overnight so that they could see what it did. And one of the other things that I really liked is if you patina your work first and then you put it in the tumbler and let it ride, all the patina comes off of the high points, stays in the recesses.
Love that.
Which probably other tumbling medias do as well. I haven't tried, but I'm sure they probably do. And then you get, though, that matte finish that I wanted and the amount of refining. So, and the students were like, this is great. You should sell this. And I'm like, because I've got this number in my head. But I finally bit the bullet. I told Dave one morning, I just walked in and I'm like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to buy 2,000 pounds of rocks. And I'll have to take out a PayPal working capital loan, but I'm going to do it. And he's like, he didn't spit his coffee out, but his eyes got really big and he's like, you sure this is going to work? And I'm thinking, no, I'm not sure.
Nope. No guarantees.
I don't even know how this goes. What if a kid eats it? What if a dog eats it? What if it ruins somebody's work? What if somebody doesn't read my instructions and they put a stone in it? Like, I'm suddenly, no, I'm not sure. And so I'm like, yeah, babe, I'm sure. Let's do it. And to his credit, this is my current husband, my daughter's dad. He's so supportive and he's like, all right, then we're going to do it. So I have it made. It's made here in America and I get it in, but it can't be delivered. It's on a huge pallet, comes on a huge truck. I can't have it delivered to my home. So I have to rent a truck and I drive to Durham and load up the pallet and then bring it home and unload it into storage. We lived for the first couple of years with it in the house. And I get my little garden spade and my little bags and I just scoop it out. It's not anything like remarkable. It was just, I couldn't find a solution for a problem I was having. I thought maybe other people would, find it helpful. And later the mini came about because the original is so big and it is more aggressive than people want. For people who want a little bit more shine, a little bit more refinement, they were finding that the matte really was not for them. So they were following up with steel shot, or then they were coming in and doing some hand finishing, but it was, it was less involved, but it was still a step. And I got that. Or people were tumbling because they just wanted it to get smaller. So they're waiting for it to wear down. And I thought, well, that's not helpful. That's not. So then I went back and I'm like, hi, it's me again. So,
knock, knock.
But yeah. So that custom product you made me, I want the same formula, but I want a different size and I want a different grit. So this is finer grit, smaller size. So a little more shine and a little less abrasive, but still effective. And yeah, so that's been something else that has felt significant because people have been very kind. They reach out, again, I know it's not for everybody. I've read particular forums where, when people are like, no, silicon carbide will destroy silver. It will never look like silver again. And I'm looking through the Rio catalog and Otto and all these others. And I'm like, but like half these tools are silicon carbide, whether it's a burr or an emery cloth or a sanding disc or maybe not as a finishing, but I was like, isn't that, and that's where I approach it, I guess, as an art jeweler instead of a fine jeweler, because I'm like, if I enjoy how it looks, if it works for my aesthetic and for what I'm trying to convey with my work, then I have a really hard time with, and that could be anything, not just tone and highlight. I mean, the die hard my way or the highway has always been like, kind of, I'm like, I just don't subscribe to it. I mean, no. To each their own, but I don't subscribe to it. And so, yeah, it's been hard. I've had to toughen up because I'm really sensitive and it's definitely not for everyone. And people let you know how they feel. And it's not a cheap product, which is hard because it doesn't cost me a ton, but it's the shipping. It's the shipping 2,000 pounds and running a truck and driving an hour and bringing, it's
all cost of goods. Yeah, it's all cost of goods, right?
Now, if I could order 20,000 pounds, my cost would go down significantly, but the shipping still doesn't. So it's like, I'm trying to figure out how to make it less expensive because I know that's a real issue for people too. And I don't if the goal is to help people, then hindering sales because of the price is definitely not what I want to do. But on the other hand, it's like, I don't know how else to make it.
Oh, you're doing the best you
Make it
can.
work.
I mean, you're providing a product for people to achieve something they're looking for, an aesthetic that they're looking for, and an efficiency they're looking for, and you're doing the best you can. You're not a Rio. You're not a
Amazon.
yeah. You're not Amazon. Maybe that's a better yeah.
Or Rio. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm not. But I try to provide, education with it. How many times
Right.
do you buy a tumbling media and it comes with, you don't really know necessarily how to use it. I mean, we're pretty intuitive, right? We'll figure it
Yeah.
out. We experiment.
Try
But
it. Hmm.
I try to give, them a postcard, try to give them a coupon for 10% off, the next order. Try to, I'm here if you have questions. I need to be better. I'm so on camera, like even my courses. I mean, it's all just my hands. Like I don't like, do this often. So I'm really bad about YouTube, but I need to get on there and do some more tutorials and show people, because I do think that the education factor is helpful. Like,
Yeah.
here's how you use it if you want this effect. Here's how you use it if you want this effect. Because it is customizable. Any tumbling media is. But I'm a chicken.
Yeah. Well, and that's okay. That's not your strength. So maybe there's somebody out there using it who could help you provide that,
Maybe.
you
Yeah,
know?
maybe that's a good idea.
And maybe it's just not the best use of your time either. You have
Yeah.
3 children, you're teaching, you're producing, and you're still selling. So, I mean, you can only do so much in the 24 hours we're given.
I know, it's so frustrating, isn't it? Like,
It's
I'm so
like, do I
human.
really have to sleep? And I really like sleep, but gosh, I wish I didn't.
I know.
Could get so much more done in a day if we didn't have to do that or eat.
That's right. That's right.
Yes. Social media. So you touched on that, and we don't have to go deep there, but it is challenging. And I feel personally and professionally, I've seen such a shift since COVID, since the pandemic, that the tone, people's tone is so much more harsh. It's like we forgot that we're humans and that the other people reading it are humans, and like we've lost all humanity. How do you deal with that? Like, do you just bottle it up, put it on a shelf, and try to forget it and move on? Or like, I mean, that's so hard. It's so hard to receive all of that negativity. And I mean, not that there's a lot of it, but just in general, there's a lot of it.
I think there's more than people want to admit that there is, because, I see a lot of the Metalsmiths that I follow and love, because they are wonderful people, and they'll talk about what a amazing supportive community we have.
Mm-hmm.
And I always feel torn when I read that, because on one hand, I'm like, we really do. But then, I don't know how many posts I could tell you. And I see it more on Facebook than Instagram.
Me too. Me too.
So maybe I can separate them out and say Instagram, I think, has been, I think like what Metalsmith Society, what Quirky has done, and a lot of the other, jewelry artists and pages that are just so sharing and willing to support one another. And I think even the algorithm has forced it a little bit, because as it forced us into reels, we had to have something to show, right? And a lot of people went to showing how they're making things. So even if it was inadvertent though, or not their first choice, they did it, and they didn't have to.
Mm-mm.
But Facebook, I'm in several groups because, well, now I forget why, because the drama and the negativity and the judgment, for me, even if I was in there because I really wanted to learn something, I would never feel comfortable asking a question. And I wouldn't feel comfortable answering a question, even if I wanted to, because someone's going to come in and rip that apart. And I don't want to deal with it. So I haven't left the groups, but I don't visit them. And if I could figure out how to get my own course groups off of Facebook, just so I didn't have to go on there as much, I would be thrilled. But I haven't found a platform yet that I really, really like, that's not going to cost a significant amount of money. So that's certainly a goal for the future. But as far as how I deal with it, like I said, I'm hugely sensitive, and I think I used to be a lot tougher I don't know if it was genuinely tougher. I think I just dealt with my insecurity differently. So I acted tougher.
Mm-hmm.
Now I just try to own, okay, this is how I feel. I don't need to say anything back. I'm not going to change anyone's mind. And I have 4 Instagram accounts. And sometimes I'm either not paying attention to which one I'm logged in as, or I'll log in deliberately because someone will write me and be like, hey, did you see this? Well, no, I can't see it under this account. So I see more than I say I see, or that I let people know that I see. And that's where sometimes the only times I really see drama, at least that would have anything maybe to do, not necessarily with me, but like, let's say hone and highlight or something like that.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure I don't see and hear everything, which I'm totally fine with, but it's like, I've just had to get to the point where, like anything else, it's a diet, right? It's what you consume and it's going to have effects. And I can't, I can't. I'm just going to try to give it my all so that when I get to bed at the end of the day, it's like, at least I know what my intentions were. I know I'm not going to do everything perfectly, but I just can't. I don't understand how people can just constantly go at each other. And especially since 2020.
Yeah, I really think the pandemic had a lot to do with the shift in people's tone and, I don't want to say mentality, but that's the word that comes to mind. We got so insular, we forgot what it was like to actually interact with people in person. And because it's online, you lose that interface, and it's hard.
I think so. I think so. And I was talking with a friend the other day because her daughter and my son are about the same age. They're 17.
Mm-hmm.
And so many kids now that age, they're not even trying to get their driver's licenses until 18. When I was growing up, when I was in high school, that we couldn't wait.
16 and a half, I was right there.
Yeah, but we had to, that was our social, like we had to get in the car and go see people. And now they're content on their phones. Like it's a whole shift, and that personal element is out. And I think that's another reason that I so badly want to make sure that I continue to teach and pour in where I can. And I love doing it in person when I can. Mm-hmm. And I've been thinking about other things you and I have kind of touched on. How can I do this more? Like, do I do a membership? Do I do like a subscription box that comes with a Zoom something so that we can at least hear each other's voices, right? Yeah, like at least, and figure out how to do that more. And Francesca's been there behind the scenes for the last month and a half or so, but I am trying to buy a church. I'm trying to buy an old country church that is an 1870s church here. It's about way out in the country, but it's here. It's less than an hour from the airport. And I'm like, I just so badly feel that I'm supposed to buy this church and like renovate it and make it into this haven and this inspirational space, not necessarily a metal studio, not like any of the ones that are always offering online classes and stuff. I want to move my studio there and be able to teach more students there. But I also want it to be like a flex space for writers to come and do a conference or a yoga retreat or, painters or whatever, or other, if people want to come do jewelry. But I really want to get into the conversation more so than skills. I want a place where I can bring people together and we can go, all right, we all have conflict. How do we channel that into creativity? How do we strengthen our work? How do we bring the most honest parts of ourselves into it so that we're creating something authentic that we care about? Because if we really care about it, we're going to do better work, and that will inspire other people to do the same. And the older I get, the more I just believe in this. And even as I teach, I find I'm caring less and less about technique. Other people can teach techniques that I don't know nearly as well. They can do it probably far more efficiently. They can probably answer questions better. There's a few things that I can go real deep on. I understand. I do it all the time. I think I'm pretty good with soldering. I think I'm pretty good with like embellishing, layering. But for me, I want to get into like the play. I want to get into the design. I want to understand your why. I want to help you figure that out, because then you can go learn all those techniques from people who are probably far more qualified, and hopefully you can bring it all together. Because what Francesca was telling you, friend, with Heart of the Maker, people
Yeah.
know the techniques, but they have no idea what to do with them because they haven't made the connection between who they are and what they do. And that's everything. It's just everything, I think. And maybe that just sounds like really woo-woo, but coming at it again, I think more through the lens of an artist.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's a beautiful compliment to what other people are really focused on. I think I've always, as an educator, focused on technique because I don't have the background you have. And that's a piece that's missing in me. So it's not something I can teach. So it's wonderful compliment to what Francesca does. And that's part of where Heart of the Maker
We
is
balance.
really, yeah.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's very like pragmatic. She's like, you need to think about this. And then I'll be doing a demo and she's like, why are you doing that? I'm like, I don't know. Am I not supposed to? It's like, I don't know. It works for me,
Well, and I think that's also the other beautiful part of your relationship with Francesca. And I would say for myself as well, like we get that there are other ways to do the thing. There are other ways to do most things. And it's not a black and white situation. And sometimes people who are just so black and white, they just can't get out of their own way and believe it until they try it. So it's wonderful that you can give people a space where they can try it, where they can fail safely, and you can actually help them see what they learned, because that's also hard. Right. I think of our demographic, and most of us don't have an art background. We don't have a traditional
Right.
jewelry or metalsmithing background. So we're learning today.
Yes.
And we're starting, from wherever we are with whatever techniques we've picked up along the way, but there's so much depth that's missing.
There is.
So much.
But I think the ones coming to it later in life, and they don't know this because they think they're behind.
Yeah.
But think about all the life experience they've had. Whereas if you're going to go into this right after college and you want to do it as an artist, you don't have nearly the resources and raw material within yourself to pull from because you haven't been through anything yet. Right. Like, not really. If you're privileged enough to go to college and get a degree and move on, and all that stuff, it's not to say you haven't had hardships or anything like that. But I have found as we get older, our friends get older, you start experiencing things with your parents, things with your siblings, relationships change. Like, you go through enough life that you see changes in the economy and politics and social, issues. Then you start figuring out more of who you are and what you want to bring into it. Not that everything you make has to be deep, not that at all. But if you just have a certain level of self-awareness, even if you just know basically this excites me and you have an understanding of why, then it's so much easier, I think, to find other things that light you up and keep you further away from the blocks, further away from the burnout, because you're in touch with something that you can't leave behind because it's in you, right?
Right.
It's like if I rely on going to travel to be inspired, what's going to happen when I come home and it's been a couple months?
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful.
Those that come in later, it's like, God, but you just have all this stuff you can bring to the table.
Mm-hmm. But it's also, we're not trained on how to tap into that, which is where I think Heart of the Maker really comes into play and will help so many people. So do you want to add a little bit more about Heart of the Maker? I know Francesca covered it, but.
Yeah, it's, so I don't know when this will air. Registration is open now for summer, but there will be a fall in person. Those tend to be a little bit smaller. We do fall in person in Texas. Who knows? Maybe one day it'll be in person in a church in North Carolina. We're not sure. Fingers crossed.
Love it.
Yeah, it is. I think you guys touched on a lot of it, but it is, I don't want to make it sound like it's all like delving deep and all that. It is. I mean, we talk about inspiration as far as certainly where to source it, different types of inspiration. Because I think most of us as artists, we look at inspiration and we think, okay, visual, right? Like, I saw this, it inspired me. So Francesca and I have this thing where we talk about nature. Like, she's hugely inspired by nature. She goes to it and she's looking at the colors and the combination of the colors. She's looking at the textures. Mm-hmm. That's how her brain works. So that is a rational inspiration. That's head. Okay. It's visual. It's concrete. It's what you see. I look at nature and I'm not so much like, oh, that green next to that green, next to that, I look at it and I'm like, I can see the passage of time. I can see how society is, encroaching on nature. I can see, a 4-leaf clover and understand that's a genetic mutation. That is a break in a pattern. And then my head goes to what other patterns can be broken and how does that relate to my life?
Wow.
So for me, it's a very emotive thing. It's a gut thing. But that, so she and I both look at nature and we come away with 2 very different points of view, right? And I think that's fascinating. So if you give like 5 people, a red block, this is your inspiration point, go. And you're going to get based on how, and then you'll get somebody who approaches things and their inspiration is more of it's called serendipitous. And that's like coincidences that happen, deja vu, something as random as, I was telling her, the guy that used to film all my online classes had a great sense of humor, but anytime I would say something like flux or, some combination of words he wasn't familiar with because of what they were, or whatever, he'd be like, that'd be a great band name. That's a great band name. And for him, that was a jumping off point for creating a joke or creating something like that. But he, it's a different type of inspiration, maybe more so for like writers and, things like that. But puns, anything like that, dreams, things that just kind of show up out of nowhere. That's very like serendipitous inspiration. So we talk about things like this in Heart of the Maker. And then there are very concrete things that we go through, like all the elements of art, the principles of design. We're talking about everything from contrast, pattern, balance, line, all these things that you can use not only to make your work more dynamic, but also more thoughtful. Like, there are certain elements that you can bring to help you convey a message. There are certain techniques that you can use that are better to convey a message. If you're wanting to do a really sentimental piece, then maybe something you need to explore is etching, because then you have the ability to literally capture handwriting, capture a drawing, capture old, World War II draft cards. We can talk about these things. And so while we're not really doing the technical, there's a lot of, you might want to explore this. You might want to look into that. Here's some resources. I'm here if I can help you. This instructor's great at that. This, it's very much just whatever we can do. And teaching them to apply it, because I think, the whole people know more than they think they do thing that I know you and Francesca already touched on. It's so true. I think the second piece of that, though, is even if they know it, they're like, okay, I know how to solder. I know how to do this. I know how to do this. But they don't always know, when they are doing their own project, the order of operations that it needs to happen in order to be successful. Because as I'm sure you hit a certain point and it's like, oh, I can't go back and do that other thing now.
Too late.
Not without undoing or redoing or, and that's where they get stuck. They're scared to do something, or they do it. And then they realize, shoot, I should have done this process first, this technique first. And then they're just frustrated. That happens enough times, and they don't trust themselves or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And so I think that teaching them the order of the operations too, as it applies to individual projects, but also an order of operations for your entire practice as an artist, as a working artist. If you want to make a career out of this, like, there has to be some system. There has to be some strategy. It's a balance, just like everything else. And I'm always preaching this to them. I'm like, you can design your work, you can design your life. And if it is good for your life, for your survival, boundaries, systems, strategies, structure, then it's going to be good for your work. It's going to be good for your art. So find the commonalities and let one flow into the other. Let one educate and inform the other. Don't compartmentalize. There's strength in bringing it together. And yeah, it probably exhausts some people, but it's a good program. We're trying really hard. I mean, we work on it year round every Tuesday for a couple hours. Mm-hmm. because it's always growing, and as we always learn, there's more to bring to the table, and every cohort's different. Always depends on the characters you have in there and where they are and what their goals are, and you want to meet them where they are.
Yep.
And yeah, I'm really happy to be a part of it. I'm really glad she asked me. It's been very rewarding and hopefully done some good for the people who've gone through it.
Oh, I'm sure. How could it not? I mean, you're awakening things inside of us that we don't know are asleep.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah. I mean, you've already.
I think some other people are like, oh my God, I need a nap just listening to that. Probably.
Well, they're not ready.
Yeah.
They're not ready.
Sorry.
No. So you have that. And you touched on the fact that you're still in production, you're still selling your work. Is that an active piece of what you're doing? Or are you doing any more shows? Still in galleries?
I have not done shows or galleries in forever. Etsy, fortunately, once I found my footing and got my shit together, I was fortunate to develop a following, and I do still have a following. So it's very small. I don't release a ton of work, not nearly as much as I would like to. I'm hoping to get to a point where I can get back to that more. But fortunately, it does sell. It doesn't necessarily like sell out. It's not flying, but it does eventually move. And I'm really grateful. The following that I have is supportive enough that I'd feel it if one or two fell away. So I do think for my own, speaking of, strategy and things like that, I'm going to have to kind of figure out how to build that up a little bit. I don't want to lose my identity as an artist. The further I fall in love with educating, that is hugely important to me, but so is the being an artist and leaving things out there that hopefully will be around in a couple 100 years. And, my descendants can be like, oh, some lady way up in our family tree made that.
I love it. Well, I do think each part of what we do, it has seasons, and
yeah, very much.
It's wonderful that you have multiple streams that you can focus on as your time and your resources allow. And when you're raising a family, you have to make choices, and when you run a business, you have to make choices based on what's happening at the time. And
That's right.
I mean, you're going to go off and buy a church, so clearly something else has to happen for that
I
to
don't
be
know.
possible.
I have no idea how I'm going to pull that off. I don't. It's not like I have money laying around to buy a church, but I'm like, I've got to figure out something. I've got to figure out something because I have to try.
It's in the universe, so something will come together. The answer will come.
But yeah, you're right. It's choices. And right now, my yard is a disaster, and I'm not the best housekeeper. And, we do a lot of crock pot meals because I need it going while I'm working.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that, like I said, I think we get a choice. And I think that, overall, for all of my joking about the 3-year-old and all of that stuff, I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade any of it. And yeah, it comes with seasons, and every job has that kind of shit sandwich that you have to eat sometimes. And we're no different.
Nope.
So there are days I just grab my napkin and let's go.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
it's just, it is what it is. And I'm honored that I get to do what I do with the people that are not on Facebook.
I think we've driven that point home pretty good.
with the people that I'm around. Yeah.
Yeah. And we shouldn't say that everybody on Facebook is evil, but it just
no, not at all. I don't mean that.
It is but it is certainly challenging. It's a challenging environment, and you have to be very disciplined to just scroll, move out, and not absorb it.
Hard road. The high road can be a very hard one to take.
Yep.
I've never regretted taking it, and I just try to hold on to that. I've never woken up in the morning and been like, man, I wish I would have just, I try to just, it's okay.
Yeah. And I try very hard not to take things personally. That's been something I've learned along the way, because it's really so hard, because I'm sensitive. I'm an empath, and I'm very sensitive to my own person. And it's really hard. So it's hard to watch other people be abused and not want to go in there and support them. Yes. It's hard to be abused and not want to react. It's very hard.
It is.
Yeah.
It really, really is.
But then when you surround yourself with people who love you and can lift you up and help you through some of those times, even if you don't share what the experience was. Like it's an important part, I think, for all of us to navigate toward,
Yeah.
like really to find who are your immediate people,
Hmm.
and know that it's okay not to be everybody's favorite and not to feel the need to be liked by everyone, because one, it's exhausting, and two, it's exhausting to
It,
think you're liked by everybody, and it's exhausting to maintain that, and it's exhausting when you realize you're
right.
not worth it.
Right. I could not agree more. And that's something I think I'm going to have to just keep learning my whole life. I don't know
Yeah.
if it's like an only child thing with
No.
me or whatever it is, but it's like I always want to kind of just be the best. And like people are
Yeah.
like, well, just try your best. I was always raised with that, which I think is
Mhm.
generally a good thing. Just try your best.
Yeah.
But I always feel like if my best was not enough or is critiqued in a certain way that like somehow is attached to what I feel is my character, then I'm just like devastated.
Yep. Me too.
And that is, I think that's the hardest thing. That's probably a downside to like trying to, I say don't compartmentalize so much, keep your life flowing with your artwork because they can inform each other.
Hmm.
But that part is really tricky, is
Yeah.
separating the work or the service, the class, whatever you're putting out there from who you are. And I had this talk with my father about it years ago because he said, for me growing up and just the stereotype and society and everything, for men, it's very difficult to separate your self-worth from yourself.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
And he said, so I get it. He said, and you cannot, they are not in the same category. They're just not.
No.
And I'm like, okay.
Okay. Can you repeat that again in a couple of weeks?
Yeah. Right.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, there are
Okay,
things you just feel like there's a big fragile sticker, but it's fine.
so you probably also are coming into a pretty busy time with school ending.
I am fortunate because my kids do year round here.
Oh, very different from my experience. Okay.
Yeah, I did it just for middle school. And of course, I kicked and screamed the entire time because I wanted my summer. Summer,
Yeah.
especially here in the South, is such a thing. But they do, their summer break is dispersed in 3-week periods throughout the year. So every season they get 3 weeks off. So it keeps
Oh,
them fresher. They don't forget everything over the summer. I'm not trying to figure out how to keep them entertained for 3 months at a time. And then,
yeah.
they get to do things in different seasons, which is nice. It's not just the hot summer all the
Right.
time. Yeah.
Oh, great.
So we've enjoyed that. It's worked for us. They don't have a high school here yet. And my son does online and he's with his dad the majority of the time anyway. But the girls, I'm like, maybe by the time they get to high school, they'll have a year-round high school because it's worked out well.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
worked out well for us.
So you do have
Yeah.
some balance then, and nothing's really gonna spike for you. So that's good. But
That
then,
part's really good. And then
yeah.
it gives me too, if traveling does pick back up, there's an opportunity to bring them. If it's like in the fall or something, well, come with me to Texas, come with me to Arizona,
Yeah.
come with me to
Yeah.
Colorado.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. Because those are
I
also
think it would
really
be,
good experiences.
yeah. And I'd like to show them, I always just saw my parents kind of doing the unconventional thing. And I think that's been a big influence on me about, you don't have to, your life doesn't have to look like everyone else's. So, yeah, I would love to be able to bring them along because obviously they're too young to really understand what I do,
Hmm.
but I think it would be neat. I think it would be neat if they ever wanted to come along and see or assist.
It's a gift.
When they're
It's a gift. If you could do it, it would be a true gift.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. All right. So you're teaching, you're still selling, you're going to figure out maybe how to balance, find more time in your day. Oh my gosh.
It's a process. But yeah, and I'm excited to get back to teaching in person because I do miss it. So I'll be at Urban Metal in September. So that is I think it's Mesa, Arizona.
Ah, okay.
I think it's just outside of Phoenix. I should know that, but yes, it's Urban Metal Studio, and they're lovely. So I'm really excited. I'm going to go do a few days out there. And then in October, we'll be doing the Heart of the Maker in person in Bulverde at Francesca's studio. And then in November, I'll be up at BOMA in Boulder, Colorado, doing a few days on like almost origami and metal folding rings, creating flowers. We call it florigami. So it's kind of it was inspired by doing origami with my son and like, oh, I could totally do this in metal. So we're gonna give that a shot. So
Well, that's exciting.
yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well,
Lots to look forward to.
Yeah, lots to look forward to, and a lot to keep an eye on what all you have going on. So you have Heart of the Maker coming up. You've got some travel coming up in the fall. You've got your tumbling media business. That's amazing, and you're continuing to adapt it and make it so that it's really helping others, not just for yourself. So thank you as a maker.
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you. I was fortunate because I just got a stockist in the UK. They wrote Metal Clay UK. They've been lovely. So they're giving it a shot. So hopefully now people in the UK can try it without, on top of the cost, paying an insane shipping, to get it over there. So
yeah,
that was really exciting. And then the other thing with the Hone and Highlight, because, the one thing I've never been able to really help with is very hard. You can tumble a lot of rings at once. You can tumble a lot of earrings at once and things like that. But chains, necklaces are always so hard.
Yeah.
And so I've been playing around, and I had seen some other people doing similar things where they were like soldering, like almost looked like a bangle bracelet out of copper or something, and then adding some jump rings around the circumference of the bangle. And they were sort of like threading things through. And I had been doing the same thing. But I was using safety pins, like making like some kind of frame or scrap and then safety pinning so that things would either stay together or, whatever. But it wasn't helping hugely with the tangling. So I've been working on these and I'm cutting these with a laser out of polymer. Okay. And they are slightly flexible. And mine are dirty because I've been using them as prototypes. But they're slightly flexible, so they won't shatter or break in the tumbler like acrylic will. And they're really, really durable, being that they're a polymer. So they'll hold up against the abrasive. I mean, they will wear down slowly, but they should last. And then they hold up against, soap or chemicals, or if you're using people who like to use like a burnishing compound or anything like that. These are some of the prototype sizes, and these just work in the standard 3-pound barrels that come with most of the, like the Harbor Freight model, the Lortone model, tumbler, all of that kind of stuff. So they just work. The little ones outside, these are nice for like post earrings or French wires.
Oh my gosh.
If you kind of pinch your wires shut just enough, it'll stay on. Or when these are released, they'll come out with a set of solid brass safety pins. And they're French style safety pins, which means they don't have the coil at the end. So you get the full movement. But you can always pin your work too. If for some reason, if you want to tumble a chain and you can't thread through, or it's like a toggle clasp, so you can't really affix the end the way you would want to, then you can just safety pin to hold it. And because it's brass, it's not going to corrode, it's not going to rust, it's not going to hurt any silver or any other materials in your tumbler. And then you just replace the brass pins as you need to, but they're more reusable. Then the other thing I've been playing with are like it's almost like really miniature little zip ties for like clothing tags. You can use those as well for super fine chains and things. But yeah, so far they're working pretty well. So this one's kind of like double duty if you wanted to thread something through and or use the outside for whatever. I mean, there's no hard fast, but I just would, pin one end and thread it through. And this is another reason I need to find someone to at least get on YouTube for me if I'm not going to do it to show this stuff, but thread it through, not so tight that it can't move at all, because you want it to have a little bit of movement so that the media can really access everything.
Yep.
If it's super tight, then where it's touching the frame, the media won't be able to do its job. But if you leave just a little bit of slack, the media can get in there, do what it needs to do, still create that even finish and that refinement, but you won't be left with, no point in saving time tumbling if then you're having to spend forever untangling at the end. So I'm hoping that this will solve a pain point. And, the fact that I'm cutting them here with a laser, there's not a middleman, and polymer's not crazy expensive. So this should be like a pretty economical offering that will hopefully save a little bit of time. And, so then I would just pin here and here and should be good to go.
Amazing. Well, that's wonderful.
So,
Again, a very thoughtful addition to what we as makers can have access to, and just very generous of you to be willing to release it and offer it to everybody.
You're kind. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you.
So we'll see how it goes. I don't know. It's kind of a prototype right now, but I think I'm going to release it later this month, and we'll see what people think.
Wonderful. Well,
So
I'll get on that list.
Stay off of Facebook after I put it out there.
Yeah. You should put up a wait list for it so that people can be notified for when it's available.
Oh, that's
so I can sign up for it.
That business mind of yours. I got to get me one of those.
No. Your business mind is fine.
I have ideas. I just don't know how to, lead magnets and sales funnels. I'm like, I don't know what language you're speaking right now.
Oh my gosh. I know. And lead magnets, people are like, what's a lead magnet? And I'm like, well, we used to call them freemiums. We call them this. We call them this. Now they call them lead magnets. It's all the same thing. Like, oh, okay. It's just terminology and somebody coming up with a new. And that it is hard. I'll just say that again. Like, it's hard when you come into something and you feel like you don't belong because you don't know the language. So I appreciate what you and Francesca are doing to help break down some of those barriers. It's something that I'm really passionate about, because in my house, in my world, everybody's welcome at my table. Like, everybody's welcome in my home. And you have to help people believe that by helping them know that it's okay that they don't know what you're saying. It's okay.
Right.
It's okay.
That's right. And for everybody that feels, like they know everything, and it's so easy for them to like come down on someone else for, technique or wording or whatever it is. It's like, I'm always reminded, because I'm one of these that loves to learn. So I feel like I'm constantly a beginner in some area. Mm-hmm. And right now I'm trying to learn, like you and I have talked about before we started recording, like trying to learn a little bit more about business so that I can be more efficient and like survive. And especially if I ever want to do something insane, like buy a church, I need to obviously probably know a little bit more about the business side of things. Yeah. It's like they forget so quickly what it was like to be a beginner.
Yeah.
And it's hard enough, I think, as an artist, because let's say we do have all the skills. We've taken the project-based courses, and this is for any medium. Mm-hmm. A lot of us, even like me, even if I went to school, so I maybe came to the table with a design language, but I still had to learn the technical skills. Or you come to the table with the technical skills, but maybe you're lacking in the design, in the depth arena. And then for people who have both, if you want to make a living at it, you still have to learn how to sell your work. So it's like you're never nailing it in all areas, and to come down on somebody who's really trying to like get going in one, it's like, I don't understand it. They teach us in school how to make our work. They don't teach us how to sell our work. Mm-hmm. And everybody has some combination of those three. You got to make it, you got to be authentic about it, somehow get your story out there, because that's ultimately what's going to set you apart and be your brand, right? Or your style. Mm-hmm. And, and then you've got to be able to sell it. And I don't know. I wish there was more grace. Like I said earlier, I wish I had been kinder earlier on. And now it's just so important to me. It's like, just be kind. Help if you can. Kind. And if you can't, hush. Like, just hush your mouth.
I like that word.
Hush. So we say in the South.
Yep.
Hush.
Hush. I like that word.
Yeah. Just hush.
I'm from Jersey. We don't say hush.
Don't say hush.
No, I like it.
My assistant Laura was here the other day. She helps me with shipping and like my sales and use and everything. God bless her. And she was talking about traffic coming in, and she was saying somebody was driving like a jack wagon, and I was like, what? So she explains it, she's from out west. And I was like, oh, you mean like a peckerwood? And she's like, what is a peckerwood? And I'm like, because we always said, well, he's dumber than a woodpecker on a power line. He's a peckerwood. So she and I are, it's like, this is how we communicate. It's fine. It's totally fine.
Well, what we say up north is not anything kind to say right here and right now.
Well, it's the South, so it's like really vicious, but it's like dripping in honey, you know?
That's right. That's right. I love it.
Yeah, bless your heart means
bless
like
your heart.
something brutal is about to come down. So, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, we could talk all day. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Tammy, thank you for this. This has been a joy, and I really, really appreciate it. And like I said, everything that you're doing. Francesca and I talk about getting our podcast together, and I don't know when either of us are going to find time, but yeah, things like this, talking with you, I'm like, because normally I'm like, yeah, sure, we can totally do that. And but then talking to you, I'm like, yeah, we really need to find a way to do it, because I just think,
well, when you're ready, you let me know. I am fortunate there, but it's still not easy. You know, I've made so many connections over the past 30 years, but you know, people are busy and not everybody has time or interest in doing something like this. So thank you.
Oh yeah. No, I think whatever we can do to kind of, they say it's such a small world, but sometimes it doesn't feel like it when everything's online. Like it's very much a double-edged sword. So this is wonderful.
Thank you for joining us, Jessica. And thank you to all of you for tuning in. For me, it's such a pleasure to meet people like Jessica along my creative journey, and I hope you have some takeaways. I don't know how you couldn't. Jessica shared so many amazing tidbits and information and really helpful ways to approach design and business and all of the things that we're here to do. So be sure to follow Jessica on social and keep an eye on all the workshops she's hosting and all of the products she has going on and coming out, and to just stay tuned on all she has coming up in her future, because she's not stopping. Oh gosh. All right. Well, so that's a wrap on another episode of Heart and Hands of a Maker. It's been so wonderful sharing this time with you. Thank you for tuning in. And if you want more, be sure to head over to tamarahahnemann.com/podcast for today's show notes and links to make it easy for you to find Jessica and all the different places where she is. Thank you all so much.